Guys, the season might be over, but the drama isn't. I think we can all agree that what Mazepin did was 100% wrong. I think it's a bad image for Haas, it's a bad image for Formula 1, and I don't think he should be in Formula 1. And apparently, neither does Haas, because reports say that they're seriously considering other options. It looks like the Russian might be kicked out and replaced by Pietro Fittipaldi. And in this video, we're going to take a look at a comparison between Callum and Pietro Fittipaldi. Let's see who truly deserves that seat. Is it Pietro or is it Callum? Let's find out. I'm going to split this video into two parts: performance and behind the scenes stuff. Let's start with performance. For a second, I'm going to compare Callum with Mick Schumacher, and I'm going to explain why in a second. Mick Schumacher got 2 wins, 10 podiums, and finished with 215 points. Callum had 3 wins, 6 pole positions, and 7 podiums, and finished with 201 points. I compared those two because if Mick Schumacher is worthy of a Formula 1 seat, then Callum is 100% worthy of a Formula 1 seat as well. That's why I compared these two. So we've answered the question that Callum deserves a seat in Formula 1. No doubt about it. In his Formula 2 season, he was outstanding. He was really, really good. He was pushing Mick Schumacher all the way to the end. He was really, really good. His 6 pole positions should tell you that he's really, really quick over 1 lap. Mick Schumacher has been lacking in terms of qualifying, and Callum has been brilliant in qualifying. And actually, Haas would benefit a lot by having someone who's really good in qualifying and someone who's really good in the race. That's a complete package. The great thing about Pietro Fittipaldi is that we can look at his 2 races with Haas in Sakir and Abu Dhabi. He was fortunate enough to get the seed, and we can get a better and clearer picture of what he would be like in a Formula 1 car. In Sakir, he qualified last, while his teammate Kevin Magnussen qualified in 16th. Kevin Magnussen had a lap time of 54.7, and Pietro had a lap time of 55.4. That's a huge, huge gap. But just as Günther Steiner said, he hasn't been driving for 8 or 9 months, so qualifying relatively close to the field is pretty good. In the race, he finished in 17th, and his teammate finished in 15th. This was his first time in a Formula 1 car in a race. This was his race debut. Considering that he didn't drive a Formula 1 car in over 8 months, 9 months, and considering that it was his first time, he was dropped in the water straight away, it's a pretty decent result. In his second race in Abu Dhabi, he was expected to perform better. He already had a taste of what Formula 1 is like in a race, so he should perform better. He qualified 19th with a time of 1.38.1. Kevin Magnussen, on the other hand, qualified with a time of 1:37.8. The difference between those two is much, much smaller, which is a good thing. It's really decent. It's a decent performance. In the race, he finished 19th, his teammate finished 18th, but Pietro Fittipaldi finished 2 laps behind. His performances, taking into account that he was dropped into that car without any preparation, his performance was really decent. It was decent. But if we take away all of that, I think he didn't really show anything spectacular. He didn't prove anything. He wasn't really outstanding. He wasn't really brilliant. I mean, those 2 races didn't convince anyone that he is a future Formula 1 star. That's 100%. He didn't convince anyone that he will be the next champion. He was good, but those 2 races didn't really show his true potential maybe. Callum Illot is still very, very young, and his performances in Formula 2 are worthy of a Formula 2 seat. His performances in Formula 2 were just amazing. Really, really great racing, super fast over one lap. And in my opinion, just looking at the performance side of things, I think Callum Illot 100% deserves that seat over Pietro Fittipaldi. But the problem is that in this sport, it isn't really all about performance, as we've seen a number of times. So let's see what's happening behind the scenes. Pietro Fittipaldi is an American/Brazilian racer. He's born in Miami and is the first American-born driver to drive for the American Haas F1 team. This really should give you a clearer picture of what's happening in Formula 1. He is an American-born driver in an American team. This really looks super, super good for Haas. I think it will boost their reputation a bit. I think it would boost their popularity a bit because he's the first American-born driver in Haas. Although he races under a Brazilian license. Brazil plays an important part in Formula 1, bringing in some incredibly passionate fans, and bringing some amazing drivers. Senna, Barrichello, Massa, and, of course, Fittipaldi. He carries the name Fittipaldi. That name signifies a lot. That name is super popular. Every Formula 1 fan knows who Fittipaldi is. He's a Brazilian, and all the Brazilian fans went nuts when Pietro was announced by Haas. And he's an American-born driver, which looks really good on paper with the American F1 team named Haas. So on paper, his nationality, his name, and the place he was born bring in a lot of reputation, a lot of popularity, and 100% bring in a lot more sponsors than Callum Illot might. Callum Illot is another British driver, and no offense to British drivers, but we have a bunch of British drivers, and Haas might not really gain anything by signing Callum Illot in terms of cash, in terms of sponsors, in terms of reputation, and bringing in more fans towards Haas. So that's the problem, and that's the biggest balancing act in Formula 1. What should Haas do? Should they sign the clearly better driver that is Callum Illot? Or should they sign Pietro Fittipaldi, who might bring in more sponsors, more money, more fans, and more attention to the team? And judging by what Günther Steiner said lately, Fittipaldi showed that he can do a good job. He did a good job. I mean, he kept out of trouble. His pace going in the race was getting better and better. I think he just needed to get it customized. I think you know that he didn't drive a car for 8 or 9 months, so it's difficult. So it sounds to me like Günther Steiner was really, really happy by what Fittipaldi did. And while fans might not actually think that he did a good job, I think that considering everything, Haas can be a bit happy. So that's the biggest problem. If you ask me, if you ask every Formula 1 fan, every Formula 2 fan, they would say that Callum Illot 100% deserves to be in Formula 1. And it's a shame that Callum Illot isn't in Formula 1. But the problem is that Pietro Fittipaldi brings with him a lot more, let's say, physical assets to the team. He brings in fans, cash, a name, the nationality. I think he brings in a lot more things behind the scenes that can help the team. Honestly, looking at what the team pairing would be like with Schumacher and Pietro, I think that the combination between those two would be incredible. I think that Schumacher will develop, will be a great, quick, speedy driver, while Pietro might be a consistent result scorer. He might be good, he might be decent, but I think he would be behind Mick Schumacher. And actually, that's a good thing in a team, because a team doesn't want two drivers that will crash into one another, that will cause trouble, that will lose points. So a team kind of likes a main driver, a number one driver, and a wingman. And Pietro Fittipaldi can play the role of that wingman perfectly if he isn't delivering. If you put Callum Illot in, the rivalry between Callum Illot and Mick Schumacher would be incredible. I think that rivalry will be really, really tough, and I don't think that Haas really needs that. Honestly, they've had Grosjean and Magnussen who were really, really aggressive. They lost a lot of points because they crashed into one another, and I think Haas doesn't want that anymore. And having two quick, young drivers will actually cause a lot of trouble in the long term. Ferrari, on the other hand, might have something different to say. I think Ferrari would want Haas to sign Callum Illot. They would like to see their two junior drivers compete in the same car, and they will have a clear picture of who's the better driver and who deserves to be promoted into the main Ferrari team. So Ferrari might actually want Callum Illot to join the team. And that's the problem. We have so many things to analyze. Do you sign Callum Illot because Ferrari might want that and because it would be a better performer? Or do you sign Pietro Fittipaldi because he brings in maybe more money, he brings a name, he brings a reputation, and because he wouldn't cause trouble to Mick Schumacher? That's the problem. In my opinion, Haas should sign Callum Illot because it's a shame to have such a good driver not have a seat in Formula 1. It's a shame. And honestly, I think Pietro is a great reserve driver. I think that Pietro wants to be in IndyCar, has some links with IndyCar, and I think he would do great in IndyCar. Again, American-born driver, an incredible job. But in my opinion, Callum Illot should get that seat. But it seems to me like that thing isn't 100% done and dusted. And I feel like Haas isn't really as sure as I am, and as sure as we are as fans. So I guess the only thing I can say is we'll see. So yeah, that was it. Stay safe and happy race watching.